It's your favorite annual tradition, Net Worth by Age.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Brian, I am so excited to talk about this because we love that we get to do this show every year where basically we talk about, okay, where is the average net worth for someone in your stratosphere? And then where should your net worth be? And then this year we have a new something very exciting we want to lay out there.
Yeah, we're going to hit it hard this year, and then we've got some metrics that you're not going to want to miss if you're trying to compare and figure out where do you fit in your net worth versus your peers out there. But here's the thing I like, Bo. Money is a taboo subject. You're not allowed to go to a family reunion or even go around your office and talk about, hey, how's your net worth stacking up? Because it is the scoreboard of your financial life, but you're just not allowed to share it that way.
It's the one thing that allows you to know, okay, based on where I am today, am I moving closer to my goals or am I ultimately moving further away from my goals? Now, it is important that we don't focus solely on the scoreboard. Warren Buffett has this fantastic quote that goes something like this. He says, games are won by folks who are focusing on the playing field, not the ones that are focused on the scoreboard. So you have to be careful that you don't get lost in only looking at your net worth statement. But it is important to periodically check it to know, am I where I'm supposed to be and am I moving in the direction that I'm supposed to be moving into?
And it's okay if you do it from time to time. And we're quickly approaching year end. This is the time to look at the scoreboard. And we know it's your guilty pleasure to also compare and contrast where you are financially to your peers. So, Bo, let's jump into this. First of all, what is net worth?
Yeah, very simply, your net worth is simply what you own less or minus what you owe. So what is the value of all the things that you have built up and accumulated? It's pretty simple calculation. List all the things that you own and list all the money that you owe on those things, and the difference is your net worth.
So with that understanding, let's jump into this by decade. Let's first start off with their 20s. All you 20-somethings, you know this is kind of the start of your journey.
Yeah, the goal here is pretty easy. You want to be net positive. You want to have more things in your own column than you have in the O column. Well, that sounds pretty simple, but unfortunately, in the world in which we live right now, it may not be quite as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, so let's kind of go through some of these stats because look, we realize when you start out, it might feel like the financial world especially, is working against you. If you look at the amount of student loan debt that people are coming out of college with, the average is $29,719. So you've already got a headwind of $30,000. Let's talk about also self-inflicted wounds that we see with a lot of young people. The average credit card debt for 20-somethings is right under $3,000, right at $2,709. And Bo, I know there's this new trend also with younger people. They are trying to avoid credit cards, but the buy now, pay later is a trend that I think is actually trapping a lot of young people.
I think Daniel found this in pre-show prep that 64% of folks who are on some sort of buy now, pay later sort of structure are either in the Gen Z or millennial age category. So a lot of young folks are doing this. They're borrowing from their future selves in order to consume today. That's not great personal finance, and frankly, it kind of starts you off behind the 8 ball, not moving in the direction you ought to be moving in.
And let's not forget that if you're just starting out, another thing that's right now an issue that we're all facing is this inflation. Right now, 7.7% inflation as of October of 2022. This all feels like a headwind, and it could also kind of make you feel like I should derail the process of wealth building. But no, I want you to stop right there. This is the ideal time because a little goes a long way. And we want to tell you the 3 things you should focus on.
Yeah, so the first thing, if you're someone in your 20s, even though you have these headwinds, is that you need to get your behavior right. We know that 80% of personal finance is behavioral. It's the decisions you make less than the actual dollars and cents of what you're doing. So one of the things that you need to be focusing on in your 20s is building those good habits, because if you're not building good financial habits, then you are likely building very bad financial habits.
Well, a lot of people, we both come from humble beginnings. I knew when I first got out there and working, and I was like, what do I do with the next dollar that comes in my possession? I knew I didn't want to get into credit card debt. I knew I wanted to start saving and investing for the future. But if you don't come from money, you don't really know if there's an optimized path. Good news, we have loaded you up. That's one of the reasons that you come to the Money Guy Show, is that everyone is welcome to go on this financial mutant journey. And we've even created this free deliverable. If you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you too can download the 9 steps of the financial order of operations so you know what to do with your next dollar. Now, after you get deep into this and you realize, hey, I like what these guys are sharing, I buy into this whole abundance cycle. If you want to go a deeper dive, we do go learn.moneyguy.com. We do have a deep dive course also on the same financial order of operations.
All right, so step 1 is to get your behavior right. Know you're making the right decisions. The second thing that you need to do, that you need to focus on in your 20s, is to understand your most valuable resource. The greatest resource that you have is actually in its greatest abundance in your 20s, and that resource is time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when you're young, you're broke, and you look at peers in your 30s or maybe your bosses in your 40s and you go, man, I'm just kind of jealous of what they have. I can tell you as a person in my 40s, I'm jealous of the most valuable resource you have, which is that component of time. Because remember, I've often shared with you, part of my wealth building journey was that high school teacher talking about, to build $1 million, all I had to do was save about $100 a month. It gets better than that. Bo, if we looked at the chart of the younger you start, the easier it is to become a millionaire. I want people, when they hear that $100 a month to becoming a millionaire if you start at age 20, what they often miss is that of that $1 million, you, the investor, have only saved and contributed $51,000 of the million. That means 95% of the value of your holdings is the growth. Look at the 30-something. They 89%, still powerful, but to get to $1 million, they have to put in $113,000 to get to $1 million, still 89% growth. For the 40-year-old, they now have to put in $234,000 to get to the same $1 million you have for $51,000. You can see the most valuable thing that drives the compounding effect is time. So take advantage of it.
Time is your greatest friend until it becomes your fiercest enemy. A 20-year-old only has to save $95. Someone who waits until they're 50 to end at the same spot has to save $2,500 a month. So make sure that you recognize that. If you want to know about how powerful your dollars are based on your age, based on where you are with your time, go out to moneyguy.com/resource. We have a free deliverable called our Wealth Multiplier that actually walks through for you where you are right now today, what every single dollar that you save can turn into by the time you get to retirement. Go check that out at moneyguy.com/resources.
Here's another big thing I think people ought to be focusing on while they're in their 20s is I want you to become an expert. I mean, we live in this I want it now type society where it's all about consumption. It's about immediate gratification. A lot of times to develop the skill set that's going to be so valuable that people will pay you a premium for it means that you do need to have a knowledge base that not everyone has. So focus on that 10,000 hours. We've heard Malcolm Gladwell covered it in Outliers. Spend some time on that. It is going to take 4 to 5 years to develop expertise and that deep knowledge. Be patient. Don't let the societal pressures of wanting it now push you away from actually building that deep knowledge.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're going to spend 10,000 hours doing something in your 20s, and you get to choose what that something is. Will it be advancing in your career or going to get professional credentials or becoming a financial mutant, or will your 10,000 hours be spent going to bars or playing video games or consuming and scrolling social media? Make that choice so that you can make sure you are actually moving in the direction you want to be moving in.
So don't be wasteful with that valuable component of time. Be deliberate with what you're doing and building that expertise.
All right, so now let's look at some numbers. For those in their 20s, for Americans in their 20s right now, if you want to know kind of where the average person is, we know that right now the median income for someone in their 20s in this country as of this year is $35,000. And the median net worth for someone in their 20s is about $7,900.
I'm just happy it's positive. As
Absolutely.
we showed, there's a lot of headwinds with student loan debt, credit card debt. You can get sidetracks, but it's a very modest amount, but still a lot of potential there.
So then the question that you ask is, where should I be? If that's the median, where should I be? Well, we have a formula for you that you can use. So right now, grab a calculator, grab your phone, and do this math. Take your age, multiply it times your income, and then divide it by 10 plus the number of years until you get to 40. So if you're a 20-year-old, it would be 10 plus 20, you would divide by 30. You take that, and that number will show where your net worth should be if you want to be an average accumulator of wealth. But we tell folks, hey, if you really want to be doing well, you should try to go for double that number. You should try to multiply that times 2. Well, one of the questions that people ask is, okay, I've done that, but how is that? Am I doing good? Am I not doing good? Where do I stack up? We came up with the answer for them.
Yeah, we've actually found where we can know where the median net worth is. We've already shared that, $7,940 for a 20-something. But listen to this, if you want to be in the top 25% of 20-somethings, it's $50,820. If you want to be in the top 10%, you need to have $132,000 in your net worth to be in that top 10%. Pretty powerful stuff, so you know exactly where you stack up.
The 20s are an amazing decade that you can do some meaningful work for your long-term financial independence, but you need to focus on the things that you ought to be focusing on. Now, Brian, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about the next decade. Let's talk about the 30s, which we always talk about is the messy middle. And man, is this the messy middle. This is a decade where a lot of stuff happens. A lot of folks buy their very first home at the age of 33. They get married. They start having a family. There's all of these different things coming on that make the 30s a pretty difficult decade.
Yeah, I think, we give a lot of grace and latitude for the 20-somethings because I know it's hard to say you need to be saving and investing 25% of your gross income. But now that you're getting into your 30s, hopefully you've been tracking your net worth. Hopefully you have built the habit of saving and investing for the future. This is the time where it starts to matter. But as you shared, Bo, it's hard because life is pulling on you in all these different directions.
Yeah, we've shown this chart before, but it's really interesting. When you map out your life, as you age, your commitments change. As you move from your 20s into your 30s, and then from 30 to 40, the things pulling you in different directions expand. You have family, you have house, you have kids, you have community, you have all of these different things. And in that same vein, those things that generally pull you in different directions also draw on your income. So the amount of disposable income that you have actually decreases in this decade. So being a diligent saver becomes really, really difficult because there are so many things pulling in your back pocket.
Well, I think it's important for all of my podcast listeners because they don't get to see the visuals that we're putting up right now. It's not uncommon in your 20s where your disposable income and your commitments kind of walk up the hill together, where they don't feel disconnected. They actually feel very correlated. And it probably doesn't feel overwhelming at that point. But unfortunately, in your 30s, because you see these big life events, like you start a family, you get let's put it in the right, you get a significant other, you start a family, and then you buy a house. All these things happen in your 30s that there's a huge disconnect between those commitments and the disposable income. And you don't actually see relief on this until you get close to your 50s. So that's why when we describe the messy middle, it is your 30s and 40s where you're trying to just make sure just keep swimming. It does get better.
And it's not just the disposable income. You can look at the exact same chart, but instead of thinking about disposable income, you have disposable time. You also don't have as much time in your 30s to be able to focus on the things that you need to be focusing on. So it's so important. If you've not established those good habits in your 20s, you have to start establishing them in your 30s because you're not going to have a ton of time to focus on them if you can't get them set up on autopilot and make sure that you have your money moving in the direction that it ought to be moving on an automated basis.
Yeah, I don't want you to get overwhelmed and just quit because like I said, that's why we titled it The Messy Middle. We want you to know there's comfort in numbers and the fact that everybody else feels like this. Just like in your 20s, you can put up with anything because you come from humble beginnings. In your 30s, you can dribble and juggle all the life commitments because everybody else is also struggling with this. This is the period where the days are long, but I promise you, the years will be short. So hang in there and just keep swimming.
So what are some big things that you can focus on? Well, the first one is in your 30s, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. You've now probably had some success. You've probably started to increase your income. And it's easy to think about that nice car, that nice house, or that nice fill in the blank. Make sure you understand why you're making the decisions you're making. And it's not just because the person next door or the person down the street made that decision and you want to look wealthy by mirroring the decisions that they're making.
I also think in your 30s, this is the time to focus on the things of knowing what you don't know. And when I say that, knowing what you don't know, that's really the risk that are sitting out there in your life. If you have children, make sure you have estate documents so you know where what happens to your kids if something happens to you. Have the life insurance, have the emergency reserves to make sure, because there's a lot of uncertainty out there. You need to plan accordingly. All these things are must-dos while you're in your 30s.
And then the third thing that I would encourage you to focus on in your 30s is, are your decisions becoming purposeful? We've already mentioned that this is a huge transitionary time in most of our lives. Well, here are some of the ways that we want your thought process to begin changing as you approach decisions. Instead of making the decision, oh, I should be saving for the future, you make the decision, hey, I'm saving 25% because you have clearly defined what it is you're saving for and why it is seriously important to you.
Yeah, and by the way, when we say saving, we also mean we correlate that and actually use it as a synonym of investing.
That's right.
So that money is being put to work. But I love the thought of it's not aspirational. In your 30s, you are putting that money to work. You are prioritizing saving and investing 25% because it's got a purpose.
And here's a great example of that. If you're someone who's 30 and you start saving 25%, and your goal is that when you retire, you want to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income, starting at age 30 will give you a financial independent state around age 59. If you wait until 35, you're still on track for a normal retirement age 64. And if you wait till the end of your 30s, you can see that number drops all the way out to age 68. You need to start saving in your 30s, because if you don't start in your 30s, it gets much, much, much more difficult when you get into your 40s and your 50s.
Yeah, it's definitely a period of being purposeful. And that is not only on how you invest your money. I want you to think about what you go to 9 to 5 every day. If you think about in your 20s, you might have a job. But in your 30s, I'm hoping you have a career where you will completely transition from a short-term mindset to very purposeful. How am I building ownership at this place I'm working at every day?
And then when it comes to consumption decisions, you move from this idea of, oh, I want to buy fill in the blank, to recognizing in your 30s, you can answer the question, hey, I don't need to buy this because I'm moving towards something that is bigger, better, and greater in the future. It is a maturing of the way that you approach financial consumption decisions.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think when you're younger, there's a lot of wants in your life, and you as you get older and you get more mature with money, you can easily differentiate between the wants and the needs that should be very purposeful for the long term.
So let's talk about where your peers are. If we look at the median income for someone in their 30s in this country right now, it's about $52,700. The median net worth is just a hair under $44,000. So you're probably asking the question, if I'm in my 30s, where should I be based on my income? Well, do this calculation. Take your age, multiply it times your income, and then divide by 10 plus the number of years until you're 40. So if you're 30 years old, it would be 10 plus 10, so you would divide by 20, and that will tell you where your net worth should be if you want to be an average accumulator of wealth. But maybe in your 30s, you don't want to know if you're average. You want to know where you really stack up against your peers. We have those numbers.
So let's look at the stratification of this. We already shared the median was right under $44,000 for most people in their 30s. But check this out. If you want to be in the top 25% of people in their 30s, you need to have $166,000 on your net worth statement. If you want to be in the top 10%, it's $408,000 is how much your assets need to exceed your liabilities to create that net worth.
Now, this is really, really cool. A great thing about your 30s is you've likely been working for a while. You've been tracking your net worth statement for a while. We have another little spot check that's really, really interesting that you can do. This is actually something we make available inside of our Know Your Number course, where we walk you through how efficient have you been with your income. And we teach you how to go out to the Social Security website, pull your historic earnings all the way back to when you first started earning money, and you compare your lifetime earnings with where your net worth is to give you an efficiency score to see how well you're turning your income into dollars. By the time you're in your 30s, you should be able to do this exercise, and it's probably going to be mind-blowing when you see how hard your army of dollar bills can begin working for you.
Yeah, I love the 30s because there's such an opportunity where you have had time to build wisdom, but you also still are so young that just really the sky's the limit on all the different things you can do. Don't miss out on that for those very special 10 years. Now let's focus on something I feel like I know a lot of. The 40s. Yep. This really is the fork in the road moment. You know, I think for those that heeded the information we've been sharing for the last 2 decades, and they hyper-focused and saved and invested in their 20s and 30s, your 40s might be a period where you can take your foot off the accelerator of saving and investing, but it's also still, this is why I love that glass half full optimistic mentality. Even if you're a person that just discovered our content, a 40-something still has the opportunity to catch up. So it is that fork in the road moment where you have to figure out, can I ease up, or do I need to be saving more because I've gotten very purposeful on this? I want to make sure I maximize the opportunity of these 10 years.
And I think your 40s is such a unique decade because you have this time where you can control what the next 20 to 30 years look like by understanding where the goalposts are. In your 40s, you ought to be able to clearly define what are wants and what are needs. And am I actually moving the goalpost? Am I trying to upgrade the house just because? Am I trying to move into the vacation home just because? Or were those things part of my original plan? In your 40s, you need to begin developing some clarity around that because those decisions are going to have huge impacts on what actual financial independence looks like for you.
I want to challenge. Bo gives this advice all the time, is that he has somebody in his life that shared, when you're in your 20s and 30s, try to think about what success is. So then when you arrive there, you'll have some gratitude or acceptance of it, and you don't try to keep moving those goalposts. Since you're in your 40s, you don't get to do that in your 20s, 30s, but I do think you could probably look back and go, man, this is a time for me to take a deep breath, realize how far I have come, so then you can once again use that wisdom to say, do I need to keep expanding, or is this enough? So that you can be very purposeful with what you're doing. Do you need the fancier car just for the sake of having it? Do you need the bigger house when your kids will be moving out in the next 5 years? All these things have a lot of value, and I really want to challenge you to think in a very deliberate fashion with what every dollar can do for you.
Okay, so let's talk about what are some things that you can focus on. Here's the first thing you need to do in your 40s. You need to make sure you're saving enough. You know, we always give this guidance. We want you to be saving 25%. We want you to be saving 25%. But maybe you're someone who did not take saving as seriously early on, or maybe you're someone who has a desire to retire early and leave the workforce early. You need to be able to figure out, is what I'm saving enough to actually allow me to do the things that I ultimately want to do?
And as you can see, 25%, when you actually look at the numbers, it's still a goalpost in a section where you have opportunities. Because you can see, even if you didn't start saving anything until you were 40 years of age, if you start saving and investing 25%, you still could retire by age 69 with everybody's health expanding, life expectancies going beyond. This is still a very doable thing. 45. Now look, 74 might not seem like the ideal time to retire, but look, this might be a modified retirement because you could always either cut your expenses, or maybe you have the retirement that starts at 65 like everybody else, but you have a part-time job that subsidizes it. You still have opportunity even if you're only saving and investing 25% in your 40s.
The second thing that we would encourage you to think about is, are you saving in the right places? You know, we always give the guidance for someone who's just starting out. Low-cost target retirement index funds are a fantastic solution. But if you've been doing it for a while and your assets are reaching that critical mass, perhaps in your 40s is the time where you don't just focus on what your saving rate is, you actually focus on, how am I allocating my assets? How am I spreading my assets out across all the different asset classes? And then am I even paying attention to what types of accounts I'm utilizing? Do I want to hold this asset class inside of this type of account, because in your 40s, when your portfolio begins to reach critical mass, those small marginal decisions can have a very big impact over the next 10, 20, 30, even 40 years.
Well, I love because you're already having a change of mindset there where you're focused on this. This is one of those sections, and this goes to my third point, is that you're also trying to figure out there's two parts of your journey. There's the wealth building part, and then there is the keeping wealth part. And I think there is a good section of people that in your 40s, you do need to transition your mindset to keeping your wealth. We know the research shows the typical millionaire crosses that point at age 49 years of age. Well, if you think about that on number 3, this might be the time to prepay the low interest debt. It's because I always tell everybody, look, from 20 to 45, that's wealth building years. Compounding growth is working in your favor. From 45 and above, maybe you need to focus on entering retirement completely independent, unencumbered, and debt is definitely an encumbrance. This is the time to kind of consider that.
All right, so now let's think about how do we compare to our peers. So if we look at the average American right now, in this year, the median income for someone in their 40s is $57,000, and the median net worth is about $144,000. So you may be asking the question, where should I be? We'll do this. Take your age, multiply it times your income, and divide it by 10. That will tell you where you should be if you want to be an average accumulator of wealth. But a lot of us, maybe our income is different than the median income, and we want to know, where do I stack up across other 40-year-olds? We've got that answer for you as well.
Yeah, I always love, because this is the Millionaire Next Door formula, and we didn't have to change it because, as I've shared already, the typical millionaire is in their 40s. So this is the perfect age to discuss and actually use that formula of age times income divided by 10 to see where you stack up. We already know the median, right under 144,000, but check this out. Top 25%, $404,000 net worth. If you want to be in the top 10%, isn't it amazing how this all works together? $1,095,000. So once again, it proves the data when you read it in the Millionaire Next Door, when you read it in our annual wealth survey that we do. It's not uncommon. The 40s is when you will cross into 7-figure, as evidenced by the data that the typical top 10% of the 40s is $1.1 million. All
right, Brian, now let's talk about the 50s. This should be the stage of life where you are starting to see the fruits of your labor pay off, and you are now beginning to look to the next phase. You're thinking about, okay, it's time that likely in the near future, I'm going to be shifting to chapter 2.0 of my life. I'm going to be getting into my golden years. What are some things that we ought to be thinking about as we move into our 50s?
Well, I mean, I think about for 50-somethings, you are realizing you got to land this airplane at some point. Your mortality is more, you're more aware. You're thinking about, do I always want to continue to work for the rest of my life? But a lot of times people will say, well, what do I need to have? What's my number? Safe withdrawal rates. I hear all these things out there. We've actually tried to create something to be a resource for you, because everything we do as part of the abundance cycle is to help you accelerate your journey. That's why we give away tons of free resources if you go to moneyguy.com/resources. But from time to time, we do realize, hey, we need to give people a deeper dive than what we can even do through a free resource. So we did come up with a tool as well as a course on Know Your Number, because in your 50s, you need to be more clear on how much you're saving for so that you can actually coordinate the timing with the savings so you can stick that landing.
How can you answer the question, am I moving in the right direction, if you don't know what the destination you're moving towards is? That's exactly what the Know Your Number course is supposed to do. It's supposed to let you know that number. If I want to leave the workforce at this age, this is the number that I have accumulated. Well, in addition to thinking about knowing your number and hitting that goal, you also have to make sure that your risks are covered. Brian already said this. In your 40s, your mindset begins to shift. It's not just about how much money can I accumulate, how much wealth can I have. It's about how much wealth can I keep over the long term. Well, as you get into your 50s, you really have to focus into a preservation of capital mindset to make sure that those dollars can sustain you for the rest of your life.
Well, it's not even just retirement. It's also one of those things where you're trying to figure out, do I need to keep this term life insurance? Do I need disability coverage? Do I need long-term care insurance? All these things are coming into shape because you are trying to mitigate risk as much as possible. But then And I do want to bring it back to, because even though we shared the Know Your Number course, a lot of people at this point will want to go beyond a basic safe withdrawal rate. They'll want to stress test their retirement plan. This is one of the most valuable things you can do, is actually to know how well are you prepared, and really try to figure out good, bad, and ugly. How are we going to do? But we have a 3P decision matrix that we use. Whether you're starting a business, whether you think about retirement, we always have the option of, one is, oh my God, I'm going to be rich, the pie in the sky plan. Right. There is the middle section, which is that probability of this is what will happen. And then we have the poo-poo plan.
That's right.
This is, oh my goodness, things are going to go bad. What I love when you run a Monte Carlo simulation is that you are taking all three of the P's into account to figure out how well and what's the probability of your success.
And what's great is the Know Your Number course gives you an idea of the number. This is the number I need to be shooting for. As you graduate past that, you begin to define, okay, I don't just need a theoretical number. I need to know, based on the number that I've accumulated, can I do all the things I want to do the way that I want to do them? That means, can I spend this much a year traveling? Can I help pay for this wedding? Can I send these grandkids to college? Can I buy the vacation home? Fill in the variables, and you can actually model that out to see what that looks like over a 40-year retirement. And you can understand, with those variables, what is your probability of success of being able to do that? And if it's not high, it allows you to make the decisions. Okay, maybe we don't need the vacation home. Maybe we're just going to travel more. Maybe we can't pay for college. Maybe we can help with college. And you can begin to define what are the realistic outcomes that I can expect to see with a high level of confidence as I move into retirement.
I often think, because we just showed the stress test there with a Monte Carlo simulation, I think the third point I would make on this is that a lot of people, this is going to be your first and hopefully only retirement. And you've only had one time to go through this. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a co-pilot to land the airplane that has landed the plane hundreds, if not thousands of times, because it will give you the peace of mind to know, hey, what do I not know? Where are my blind spots? We just showed you that stress test with the Monte Carlo simulation. We run that on every one of our retiree clients. This is something that I always say, the point number 3 here on 3 things to focus on, is this the time to take the relationship to the next level? Because you don't want to get into a situation where you've built this 7-figure portfolio, but your mistakes, instead of them being a $10,000 mistake, it could be a 6, if not even 7-figure type mistake. The decisions, the weight of every decision you make going into retirement is so big, it would be nice to make sure you have somebody there to help you protect yourself.
And so if you think you're someone who might be in that place, I'd encourage you to go check out our Work With Us page. You can see exactly what it is that we do and how we do that and how we work with folks to do that over a successful retirement. So now your question is, okay, well, how do I stack up to other folks in my 50s? Where do my peers land? We know that someone in their 50s right now has a median income of $55,000 and a median net worth of about $181,000. And I think in the 50s is where financial mutants really start to separate themselves. So if you want to know where you should be, take your age, multiply it times your income, and divide by 10. That'll show you if you were an average accumulator of wealth. But if you're a financial mutant and you're someone who's planning for financial independence, odds are you probably want to be about 2 times that number to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth.
But this is when I'm so happy that we're stratifying this, is because I actually get sad when I see that the median net worth for somebody in their 50s is $181,000. Because if you apply a safe withdrawal rate, whether it's 4%, 5%, you could even go some crazy aggressive number that I wouldn't feel comfortable using. And you can just see 181,000 is not going to go as far. If you want to be in that top 25% of 50-year-olds with net worth, it's $566,000. If you want to be in the top 10% that have made that sacrifice, that deferred gratification choice when they're younger so they could have that great big beautiful tomorrow, that top 10% is $1,867,000. So right under $1.9 million is where the top 10% sit in the 50-somethings. focus on where you're going to fall and are you being purposeful on reaching those goals.
I think it's so wonderful, Brian. You know, we love getting to do our net worth statements. We love making that a process that we work through every year. And it's not because it's a point of pride. It's not because it's a point of hubris. It's not because it's something we want to brag about, but it really is that metric that lets me know, am I doing the things that I ought to be doing in order to move towards the life that I want to live in the future? Your net worth statement is a great spot in time check to let you know if you're where you're supposed to be. And if you're not, it can be that motivation to get you moving in the right direction towards where you want to be.
Well, I think there's a big difference between a 20-something and a 50-something. They have different desires. They have different goals. They have different blind spots. I love that every year we get to create this type of content so you know exactly what you need to be doing in a maximized way. And then also we even give you the little secrets, the taboo subject that nobody else is willing to talk about. How do you stack up? Because you can't, like I said, you can't talk about this with your friends and your family. We are your resource. And I think you can tell every year this show gets a little better. So make sure you keep tuning in. Go check out our free resources, moneyguy.com/resources. If you need a deep dive, learn.moneyguy.com. And of course, you can graduate to the next level by working with us. But I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team, net worth out.